Hare Prabhupada ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Gaura Premanandi Hari Bol. How close in age are you two? No, the two girls.
Yeah.
Your age?
Yeah.
The best friends. Same age.
Same.
Yeah, the same age. Same grade.
10th grade.
And they're best friends also.
Best friend, all right. You go to the same school?
We're going to Tuesday.
Fantastic. It's good to have a best friend. So we're going to continue with 2 verses. We're going to finish commentaries on 1 verse and then start another one. Reading from Canto 10, Chapter 8. Text 46. This is everything's been concluded. Well, so what have we covered so far? Mother Jasoda saw what she saw inside Krishna's mouth, and she reacted the way that she reacted and began to consider what the causes might be, and then she just said, forget what the cause is, he's my son, that's it. And then this previous verse had like so much commentary where Shukadeva Goswami is just expressing his affection and appreciation for Mother Yasoda, the quality of Mother Yasoda's prema. So the verse says, in sequence of what scriptures reveal, and different scriptures reveal different things about Krishna, but Mother Yasoda was at the pinnacle of prema, that simply seeing her own son. We heard that verse, according to two of the acharyas, it's a principal verse that governs all of Krishna's Brajalila. That is, the residents of Braja, whether they know or they don't know the divinity of Krishna, they just know their overwhelming affection for Krishna according to their rasa. And having heard that from Shukadeva Goswami, Maharaj Parikshit now responds. Having heard, this is text 46, having heard of the great fortune of Mother Yashoda, Parikshit Maharaj inquired from Shukadeva Goswami, O learned Brahmana, Mother Yashoda's breast milk was sucked by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What auspicious activities did she and Nanda Maharaj perform to achieve such perfection of ecstatic love? So this is chapter 8. This means it's still Prabhupada's purports. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 7.16, Chatur vidha bhajante mam jana sukritanorjana. Without sukriti, or pious activities, no one can come to the shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord is approached by 4 kinds of pious men: Arto, Jigyasur, Artarti, Jnani, Cha. But here we see that Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda surpassed all of them. Therefore, Parikshit Maharaj naturally inquired, quote, what kind of pious activities did they perform in their past lives by which they achieved such a stage of perfection, unquote. Of course, Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda are accepted as the father and mother of Krishna, yet Mother Yashoda was more fortunate than Nanda Maharaj, Krishna's father, because Nanda Maharaj was sometimes separated from Krishna, whereas Yashoda, Krishna's mother, was not separated from Krishna at any moment. From Krishna's babyhood to his childhood, and from his childhood to his youth, Mother Yashoda was always in association with Krishna. Even when Krishna was grown up, he would go to Vrindavan and sit on the lap of Mother Yashoda, which you don't normally hear about, but here it is in Prabhupada's purport. Therefore, there is no comparison to the fortune of Mother Yashoda, and Parikshit Maharaj naturally inquired, Yashoda ma maha bhaga, bhaga, great Mahabhaga, greatly fortunate Yashoda. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, seeing how Yashoda's love did not waver even after hearing about and seeing the Lord's powers, and understanding that Yashoda and Nanda's love far surpassed that of the karmis and even the normal devotees, Parikshit in astonishment spoke, what Sukriti Nanda must have performed to get such great results. Yashoda is called Mahabhaga because her Sukritis were even more. Jiva Goswami writes, Yashoda's great affection for the Supreme Lord has been described. Having heard of her parental affection for the Lord, and astonished by her great fortune, Parikshit inquired about Nanda's and Yashoda's good fortune. What type of pious activities, which caused such complete affection, Mahodayam, did Nanda perform? What did Yashoda, even more fortunate Mahabhaga, do, since the Lord drank her breast milk? Lovingly, this is now chapter 85 of Canto 10. This is Krishna's reunited with Vasudeva and Devaki. Lovingly, she let her sons, this is Devaki, sons plural, that's Balaram and Krishna, drink from her breast, which became wet with milk just by his touch. Speaking of Devaki. Thus Krishna had drunk the milk from Devaki and other cowherd women also. However, although Devaki had fed Krishna, her love was mixed with conceptions of Krishna's Aishvarya, and so he did so only once, not as a habit. That once is said, at least when Krishna accepted, was before taking Krishna to cross the river to Gokul, that once. He drank from the gopis' breasts, but in another form, that is, taking the form of their cowherd sons during the Brahmi Vimohan pastime. You familiar with that? No. Yes. Maybe. The Brahmi Vimohan Leela refers to Brahma stealing the calves and the cowherd boys, putting them in the cave, and coming back and seeing there they were having lunch. So he went back to the cave and they were in the cave. Then they went back and they were having lunch. So in that time period when he was shuttling back and forth, in Brahma's time, one moment, or brief period, 1 year passed on earth. 1 year. And there's a very elaborate explanation. Here's some of it. The cowherd boys were under very strong influence of Yogamaya, and they were forgetful that 1 year had passed because they were in the cave. The cowherd boys that Brahma saw that were still sitting having lunch, they were Krishna's expansions that looked identical with the cowherd boys. Not only they looked identical, but their voices were identical. And so when the boys went home, because 1 year had passed, the mothers were astonished that their affection for their son was now same as their affection for Krishna, because most mothers have affection for other children, but not the same for their son. But in Braja, they have more affection for Krishna than their own son. So when their sons came home that day, they were astonished, and then for a whole year, their affection for their sons grew and grew and grew because they were accepting Krishna to be their son, or their son to be was Krishna for a whole year. And the calves, the same thing. The calves went back to their mothers, to the cows, and the cows were able to give milk directly to Krishna in the form of their calf for a whole year. And then there's a further description. One day, Krishna and the cowherd boys were traveling, and the cows saw their calves, and they went galloping down the side of Govardhan Hill. I've seen cows run, and it's really funny. It's not like elegant like a horse. They kind of different, but they can run. And the bulls, they saw, and they started running because they have affection for Krishna, and Krishna was their son or their calf. And so the cowherd men, they started running after the cows and the bulls come back, with their sticks raised, the whole thing. But as they got closer and closer, they forgot everything because they were just in Krishna's association. And the calves took milk from the cows, and the bulls were mooing, and the cowherd men were embracing their sons, and everything was nice. Because for 1 year, Krishna had taken that position. And the reason he had taken that position was the mothers of their sons had desired to have Krishna as their son. So Krishna became their son to fulfill their desire, but in a very interesting way. Then after that, it's kind of interesting what happened. After that 1 year passed, the boys that were in the cave for 1 year, a 1 year passed, and there's description. They grew 1 year, and they must have gotten hungry. But they forgot about eating and drinking and anything. They were just under the influence of Yogamaya. That's what our acharyas describe. And then they were brought by Krishna to sit with him and finish their lunch. And so then the Yogamaya was withdrawn, and they said, "Oh, Krishna, you're so much attached to us, you can't be away from us for a moment. Sit down and finish your lunch." Like as if nothing happened. There's some other events, but that's kind of the main theme. So that's what's being referenced here. So the sentence reads, "He drank from the gopis' breasts, but in another form, taking the form of their cowherd sons during the Brahma Vimohan pastime." And the last sentence of Jiva Goswami's commentary, "Thus, they did not have the same affection for Krishna as Yashoda did, because she was with him all the time. Thus, Krishna's drinking from her breast is glorified more." Then here's Sanatana Goswami, his commentary. Yashoda's great affection for the Supreme Lord has been described. Having heard of her parental affection for the Lord and astonished by her great fortune, Parikshit inquires about Nanda's and Yashoda's good fortune. "Oh, Shukadev, you know everything about this. What type of pious acts which caused such complete affection, Mahodayam, did Nanda perform? What did Yashoda, even more fortunate, Mahabhaga, do, since the Lord drank her breast milk?" Yashoda is distinguished from Devaki, although he drank from Devaki's breast also. Makes the same reference from chapter 85. Then here's a reference to the next chapter. The next chapter of this chapter is the Damodar Leela. Chapter 9, first 20 verses begins the Damodar Leela. So this is commentary from the first 2 verses of chapter 9. The most astonishing and uncommon parental love, Vatsalya Prema, wherein Krishna became the object, Vishaya, and Nanda and Yashoda were the shelter, Ashraya, must have been the result of a most extraordinary and unparalleled form of sadhana. But it wasn't the case. Parikshit had asked the question to Shukadev, but the story of Drona and Dara, because after Parikshit's question, which is 46 and then 47, the rest of the chapter is this Shukadev Goswami telling the Drona and Dara story. And I'm going to give you some details on that, so put it press the pause button for a moment. We'll go to Drona and Dara again. But the story of Drona and Dara did not reveal such extraordinary sadhana. Seeing that Parikshit was not too pleased, Shukadev told him about Krishna's Damodar Leela to give the real answer to Parikshit's question, which was, this text 46, what auspicious past activities did Yashoda and Nanda perform? So the answer that was given, we'll go through it slowly and in more detail. What pious activities did each of them undergo? Shukadev Goswami starts telling about Brahma instructing two residents of the heavenly realm, Drona and his good wife Dara, to descend on earth because it's time for Krishna's appearance. So Drona and Dara are Vasus, just like grandfather Bhishma was a Vasu. Now, what are Vasus? Not a whole lot of explanation what Vasus are, but they're warriors, and they have some function in the heavenly realm of protecting. So that's what Vasus do. They're very chivalrous. And Drona was one of the chiefs of the Vasus. So we're going to hear in some detail, but Drona and Dara are partial expansions of the eternal associates, mother and father, Nanda and Yashoda. I'll say it again. Nanda and Yashoda expanded themselves in partial forms that then became Vasus under Lord Narayan's direction. We're going to hear the detail. He directed them to do this, so they did this. They expanded themselves in a partial form as Drona and Dara. And then when it came time for Krishna's advent in this world, they had requested Brahma, we're going to hear the details, they had requested Brahma, we'd like to have offspring, can you give your blessings? And he said, yes, you can take birth on earth and become the mother and father of Krishna. You with me? Should I do it again, or anyone's lost? We're good, okay. So then they, Drona and Dara, partial expansions of Nanda and Yashoda, entered the body of Nanda and Yashoda, which means that there's two, Nanda and Yashoda were Nanda and Yashoda, and the expansions of their partial expansions, Drona and Dara, entering within them. When the pastimes were over, Krishna sent them back to the heavenly realm. We'll go over it again. That was just a kind of quick summary. It's a little confusing, but when you hear it a few times, it'll not be so confusing. The Drona. So when chapter 9, we're going to hear that Nanda and Yashoda, they didn't become anything. They're eternally Krishna's mother and father in his uppercut Leela. For his manifest pastimes, they appeared as Nanda and Yashoda. And then when his pastimes are over, their uppercut forms assume their uppercut position, eternally the mother and father of Krishna. For this particular yoga cycle, Drona and Dara entered into the bodies of Nanda and Yashoda and took part in the pastime because they wanted Krishna. They wanted Krishna as their son. Here's now from chapter 20 of verse 20 of chapter 9. That chapter 9 is the Damodar Lila. So verse 20 reads, neither Brahma, nor Shiva, nor even the goddess of fortune, who is always the better half of the Supreme Lord, can obtain from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the deliverer from this material world, such mercy as received by Mother Yashoda, Damodar Lila. And this is Vishwanath's commentary. This verse is spoken on seeing the exceptional devotion of the Queen of Vraja, who among all the devotees brought Krishna under her control. Vimukti here means Vishesha Mukti, or specialized liberation or prema. And the giver of that prema is Krishna, Vimukti Dat. And names given to Shiva, Brahma, and Lakshmi, they're mentioned. Virincho, that's Lord Brahma. The inconceivable mercy that Yashoda obtained from Krishna, the giver of prema, was never received by Brahma, Lord Shiva, or even Lakshmi Devi. Shri. Paragraph. Interesting Sanskrit detail. This verse contains three negative pronouncements. Ne mam, na bhavo, na shrir. So none of those three. Three repetitions emphasize the exceeding absence of mercy offered to these exceptional personalities. However, the word api, or indeed, in the same sentence can mean that even though they received mercy, it was not to the extent of Yashoda. Lord Brahma is the son of Bhagavan, Sri Krishna, and the Adi Guru of all the devotees. As the topmost Vaishnava, Vaishnavanam Yatashambhu, Lord Shiva is considered superior to Brahma. The goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, who resides on the chest of Vishnu, is superior to even Shiva and Brahma. The shelter of Sakya and Dasya, Rasa. Nevertheless, Mother Yashoda is in the supermost exalted position because she alone obtained such extraordinary mercy from the Lord. It is wrong to think that Yashoda is a sadhana siddha, like from this verse, text 46. Maybe she did some penances and did some sadhana, and then she became. It was wrong to think of her that way. That somehow Yashoda got a boon from Brahma in her previous lifetime as Dara. So there we are, Drona and Dara again. The prema of Yashoda cannot be attained as a result of Brahma's boons. For Brahma himself prays to become a blade of grass in Braja. Indeed, Brahma is counted in a much, much lower class. In this text 46, Shukadev says, "Oh, Parikshit, although you know about the Nanda and Yashoda, who are famous in the scriptures as Nitya Siddhas, in answer to your causal question, 10.8.46, about their austerities in previous lives, I told the story of Drona and Dara, who are very small expansions of Nanda and Yashoda." So you'll hear it several times and it'll start to become more clear. Here's Jiva Goswami writing in Krishna Sandarbha. Drona and Dara were partial expansions. The Sanskrit word is Angsha. Angsha and Vibhinangsha. There's partial expansions. Angsas of Nanda and Yashoda. And merged into them when they appeared on earth with Krishna. They went from their aprakat to their prakat, and Krishna came as their child. it is correctly said that his relationship with Nanda and Yashoda is eternal. Thus, the verses in chapter 9, Damodar Lila, until verse 20, negate the story of Drona and Dara of the previous chapter, since it is not proper to insist on a previous statement which is contradictory to a later statement. We're going to hear some more about that. There's a Vedanta Sutra rule for how to understand Sanskrit. And if something is stated first and then later something is stated different, the one that's later supersedes the one that's stated previously. Or you must understand the one previously in terms of the later one. It's a Sanskrit rule. Paragraph. The description of the eternal parenthood of Nanda and Yashoda, found in chapter 9, is given after the description of their previous birth as Drona and Dara, chapter 8. If there are two contradictory statements in the scriptures, the second statement should be accepted, and the previous statement should be interpreted so that it does not contradict the later statement. This rule of interpretation is expressed in Vedanta Sutra, and he gives the sutra. Paragraph. The truth is that Drona and Dara are partial expansions, Angsha avatars, of Nanda and Yashoda, Krishna's eternal parents in the spiritual world. They, Nanda and Yashoda, descended to this material world from the unmanifest state, just as the Lord himself did in order to display his pastimes on earth. And I'm going to read two more things and we're done. This is from Garga Samhita, explaining all of this. Once, the partial expansions of Nanda and Yashoda appeared in Swarga as the demigods Drona and Dara. Drona was one of the 8 Vasus, and as a great devotee of Lord Vishnu, he ruled a kingdom in heaven. Doesn't say which one. Vasu kingdom, I guess. Because they were childless, Drona and Dara went to Mount Mandara and implored Lord Brahma to give them the Supreme Lord as their son. Lord Brahma smiled and assured them that their desire would be fulfilled. When the time came for Krishna's Prakat Lila on earth, Drona and Dara appeared in Gokula in accordance with their previous desire. However, Krishna's eternal parents, Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda, who were the original counter poles of Drona and Dara, had also appeared in Prakat Vraja, as they always do upon Krishna's descent. Thus, Drona entered the body of Nanda Maharaj, and Dara entered the body of Yashoda Devi. In this way, when Krishna was finally born, Drona and Dara were able to share the bliss of being his parents. Conclusion. This is not Garga Samhita. It's the conclusion of the explanation of what we just heard. Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda Devi, who were fortunate enough to enjoy the childhood pastimes of Krishna in his Prakat Lila, were the combined form of 2 sets of personalities, the eternal parents of Krishna within Goloka, Nanda and Yashoda, as well as the partial expansions of those same personalities from Swarga, Drona and Dara. Good to have an explanation, because otherwise it's confusing, even hearing the explanations. So here's now, last but not least, is very elegant description by Jiva Goswami of the same thing in Gopal Champu. So I've been explaining when we read from Gopal Champu, what is it? It's one of Jiva Goswami's many books. And it's not exactly a commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam, but it's kind of. It's just retelling Krishna's pastimes in Braja. It's like a 10th canto commentary without just citing the verses. It's just narrating and putting all the pieces together. So here we go. Accompanied by his wife, Parjanya came to Vrindavan. Who's Parjanya? Parjanya means, we went through this, it means rain, but he's the father of 5 sons. The elder of the 5 sons is named Upananda. So normally so Parjanya is going to give the title of the next king, so he naturally approaches the elder son Upananda, who says, no, the qualified one is Nanda. And just even look at my name. Upananda means the father of Nanda. He should be the king. So, accompanied by his wife, Parjanya came to Vrindavan. Then, standing in Nanda's assembly, as Bhishma stood in the assembly of wonderful fighters, Upananda affirmed that his own name means the father of Nanda. Accepting Upananda's words, Nanda accepted everyone there as his eternal subjects. He ruled over them and protected them. Nanda's actions were wonderful. Nanda was always respectful to his father. In his country, religion was never in distress. In his country, prosperity was never crippled. In his country, prosperity always grew more and more. Everyone in Braja lived at the height of prosperity. Still, one worry gradually blossomed among them. Quote, our king, who is more dear to us than life, has no children, they thought. In course of time, this worry troubled Upananda and everyone else. Then Nanda and Yashoda, the rulers of Braja, became overwhelmed with the desire for a child. As time passed, that desire grew stronger and stronger. So, Gopal Champa was a dialogue between an elder and a younger brother, Madhukanta and Snigdhakanta, their names. So Snigdhakanta is hearing from his elder brother, who asked, why did Nanda's friends and kinsmen not perform a yajna to give Nanda children? Why were intelligent Nanda and Yashoda so upset that they had no children? They were already king and queen of Braja. Why did they yearn for children? Why did that desire become stronger and stronger as time passed? The elder, Madhukanta, said, yajnas were performed, but that it brought no result. Snigdhakanta said, why? Why was there no result? Madhukanta said, in private, glorious Nanda and Yashoda spoke about this. Nanda said, dear wife, why do my grief-stricken relatives perform yajnas and other ceremonies so I may have children? My heart yearns to have a glorious son. Why is it that desire is not fulfilled? My heart cannot say. If merciful Lord Narayan, who is attained by the followers of the Vedas, is kind to me, then I will certainly have a glorious child. Perhaps my desire is like a parijata flower which fools imagine to float in the sky. Then Snigdhakanta thought, Krishna is more sweet and charming than Lord Narayan himself. It is not wrong to say this. The truth is confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam by Uddhava in these words. Quote, is the translation of 3:2:12. The Lord appeared in the mortal world by his internal potency, Yogamaya. He came in his eternal form, which is just suitable for his pastimes. These pastimes are wonderful for everyone, even for those proud of their own opulence, including the Lord himself in his form as the Lord of Vaikuntha. Thus, Sri Krishna's transcendental body is the ornament of all ornaments. He was thinking like that. Then he said, and then? Madhukanta said, then Yashoda, Nanda's beautiful wife, said, what reply can I give? Then Nanda said, I see a dark boy with large restless eyes. I see him playing, and I see him sitting on your lap, and I see him drinking milk from your breast. When I see him, am I dreaming? Or am I awake? I do not know. O saintly wife, please tell me the truth. Do you also see him in your heart? Yashoda said, O glorious husband, I have seen this child in my thoughts, but I was too shy to tell you. This desire can never be attained. We should not keep it in our hearts. Nanda said, although it is my destiny to be childless, I will take shelter of the glorious Lord Narayana, the controller of the worlds. With his help, my desire will be fulfilled. This I know. What has never been seen and never heard before, he can place before everyone's eyes. He can do any impossible deed. Yashoda said, O Master, we should serve Lord Narayan. Nanda said, good. What service shall we perform? Yashoda said, we could follow the Dwadasi Vrata. Nanda happily said, what you have said is good. The desire to follow this vow has now sprouted in my heart. We shall follow it. When the two of them decided in this way, the demigods made a great sound of dundubi drums, a sound that filled all directions. Hearing this description of his thoughts and desires, Nanda felt his heart melt. To the young poet, he gave a gift of his own glistening ornaments. His wife, glorious Yashoda, gave the poet a great necklace of sapphires. This is Madhukanta. Snigdhakanta earnestly said, what happened then? Madhukanta said, when Nanda and Yashoda had passed a year of following this vow, which all Vaishnavas observe anyways, the Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared before them, both in their dreams. He said, oh, devotees very attached to me, why are you so troubled? A delicate dark boy, and glorious like an atasi flower, will become your son. You will be able to gaze on him always. To increase your love for him, this boy becomes your son, kalpa after kalpa. Following my order, you appeared in your angsa kala forms as Drona and Dara in the world of the demigods. Lord's saying on his order they did this. To fulfill that which others cannot attain, you took birth on earth. In this place, a place glorified in Srimad Bhagavatam 10:14-34, that's Brahma's prayers. Please know that your glorious desire will soon be fulfilled. After speaking these words, the glorious Supreme Personality of Godhead at once disappeared. Suddenly awakening, Nanda and Yashoda, as they plunged in an ocean of nectar, telling each other what they had seen, they were filled with wonder. In his heart, this is it, concluding. In his heart, Snigdhakanta thought, now my questions are answered. When he said, quote, you too will attain him as your son. That is what the Supreme Lord meant. That is what Garga Muni meant when he said in Srimad Bhagavatam 10:8-14, this is the Namakarana message. For many reasons, this beautiful son of yours sometimes appeared previously as the son of Vasudeva. Therefore, those who are learned call this child Vasudeva. And that's the end. Gopal Champu. So it fills in some missing pieces like Drona and Dara, how they fit in. So in a previous, maybe it was yesterday evening, one of the previous evenings, this question that Maharaj Parikshit is asking, which we've been reading about this evening, one of his purposes asking is it possible for a living entity to become Nanda and Yasoda? The answer is no. But he doesn't right away, Sukadeva doesn't right away give that answer. He speaks of Drona and Dara, who were Vasus, but somehow they were, doesn't say that in those verses how it was that they were in that position as Vasus and eternally associated with Krishna. They were associated eternally with Krishna because they're expansions of Nanda and Yashoda. And they wanted, so in the Leela, they wanted children. Brahma gave them this benediction. And so it was. So they advented in this world. That's what's being told in chapter 8. So going forward, when I'm going to be heading for the next place tomorrow. We'll continue with these evening discussions, but you can just read on your own the rest of the chapter. And it just speaks about Drona and Dara. It doesn't say anything about what we just read. And Maharaj Parikshit said at the beginning of chapter 9, Maharaj Parikshit is not satisfied. Wait a minute. There's an eternal Nanda and Yasoda, right? They're Nityasiddhas, right? And that's what it says in chapter 9. They don't become, they're Nityasiddhas. Not Sadhana Siddhas. So that is the right understanding. And at least in this particular cycle of yogas, when Krishna appears in Vrindavan, it's with two entities. So we'll go over this other thing one more time. One of the nice things about the Bhagavatam that makes it a little complex is it's not chronological. It's quite logical, but not chronological. So it's not always, okay, like an encyclopedia, you hear this, and then okay, now I got that picture. Then you move on to something else. Okay, now I got, it's not structured like that. So it helps to have our acharyas that know something over here and something over there and something over there, and they piece it together, and then go on and they come back, they piece it together again, and now it's something else. The big picture of Krishna is really big. His potencies, his personality, his associates, his activities. And it's nice to become, through their assistance, familiar with the different pieces of the puzzle, and when the pieces of the puzzle are put together, it's a beautiful picture. But otherwise, just looking at this piece of the puzzle and that one, like, how does it fit together? It's Krishna's loving nature and the exalted nature of his loving associates, and he's reciprocating with. That's the essence. And then there's varieties of that, and acharyas churning the topics. So, I growing up as a young brahmachari, I never heard this, but in the past year or so, year or two, I've come to understand from Brihat Bhagavatamrita, and this one sentence that came in the purport, the Prabhupada said, Krishna comes and sits in the lap of Mother Jasoda. I don't know where that comes from. He didn't say it out of the air, so it's come from somewhere. But the in Brihat Bhagavatamrita, well, before Brihat Bhagavatamrita, in Padma Purana, Jiva Goswami makes this remark multiple times. On the authority of Padma Purana, after Krishna kills Shishupal, the next demon that he kills is Dantavakra. So those are Jai and Vijay last time around, and they go back and to their Jai and Vijay position. And there's like a little stopover on the way, but they go back. And then after killing Dantavakra, so he is in his Dwaraka Bhav, majesty. You know, the attire is appropriate for majesty. Then he's right by where Dantavakra was killed. Jiva Goswami goes into detail and says there's even today, there's a village named such and such, just by the main gate of Mathura. That's where he was killed. It was named after him, after his being killed there. So Krishna then attired himself as a cowherd boy, because remember, although he's of years, substantial number of years, his body still looks youthful. We heard references that when Pradyumna was the first son of Krishna, right? Pradyumna was the first son of Rukmini and Krishna. They had 10 sons, and Pradyumna was the eldest. So when Pradyumna was going into the inner chamber of Krishna, the ladies saw, and they thought, oh, that's Krishna. So they became shy and receded. Meaning that Krishna, his looks of Krishna was the same as his son. Pradyumna at that time was 12, Krishna looked 12. Or sometimes it said 16, youthful at least. So think of somebody you know that's 12 or 16. And that's what Krishna looked like when he was 125. So he attired himself in cowherd attire and went back to Braja. And we hear from Padma Purana he spent 2 months. In some cases it says 3 months. Just with the Brijvasis, and they were so happy. So happy. And one of the purposes of his doing this was to wind up the Prakat pastimes of Braja. So all the personalities, 3 things happened. They went into the uppercut stage. Their manifest forms were no longer manifest to the world. Then the second is, some of the personalities that were with associates with Krishna were partial expansions of someone from the heavenly realm, like Drona and Dara. There's many other examples that are given without the detail. So that's the second thing that he did. The partial expansions, they returned. And the third, it says that Krishna arranged for a Vaikuntha Vimana to take those who were in his Prakat pastimes to the spiritual world. Because remember when we heard the cowherd men, they were taken to the lake and they were shown the spiritual world in that lake? That's their destination, so he took them to that destination. He arranged a Vimana to take them to Goloka. They entered the uppercut form, they went to the spiritual world, and Krishna simultaneously, along with the eternal associates, manifested unprakat Krishna form, and then another form of Krishna went with them to the spiritual world, and then another form of Krishna returned to Dwaraka. to wind up the Dwarka Lila. Now you can't do those things unless you're Krishna. And if you're Krishna, you can do those things. He's just engaged in loving exchanges with everyone. And depends on how much the love we have, the kind of love that we have, what we experience in our, even as sadhakas. What to speak of siddhas, sadhana siddhas, what to speak of nitya siddhas. These are nitya siddha devotees. And this loving exchange, and he shows his loving pastimes to give us, to attract our hearts and minds, to resume our original position with Krishna, forgotten relationship with Krishna. And that there's potencies within these messages and passages of the Bhagavatam to do that. And, our acharyas, they love the Srimad Bhagavatam. I'll just end with this. Jiva Goswami, this is, one can say, legitimately, Jiva Goswami wrote 4 commentaries on the Bhagavatam, with Gopal Champu counted as one of them. It's just a retelling of Krishna's pastimes in all detail. The Brajalila pastimes. Gopal Champu. Then there's another commentary that's not all the verses from the 10th canto, but very elaborate verses on many of the 10th canto verses. Then there's one that's all the verses. It's Krama Sandarbha. Bhanu Swami recently translated that, so now that's available in English. And then his Sat Sandarbhas, that's topic by topic. He loved Srimad Bhagavatam. He wrote other things, but he loved Srimad Bhagavatam. And I mentioned this morning, Sanatana Goswami, he loved Srimad Bhagavatam too. So he wrote Brihat Bhagavatamrita, which is a commentary on the Bhagavatam. And he wrote 417 verses of prayer to Srimad Bhagavatam. That's a lot of verses. And I sent the document so she can forward to all of you, if she hasn't done so already. There's a document that we often hear that Srimad Bhagavatam is the literary form of Krishna. Like the sixth question of the sixth of the 6 questions. When Krishna departs, how are religious principles, where do they take shelter? And the answer is the Bhagavatam. It's as brilliant as the sun. So the Bhagavatam is Krishna in a literary form. So where else does it say that? There's a whole document where else it says that. And one of the places it says that is in the final 5 prayers of Sanatana Goswami. It's in this document you'll get a copy of, where he says he's glorifying the Bhagavatam as Krishna. He loves, as he loves Krishna, he loves the Bhagavatam, because that's access to Krishna for anybody, any one of us, for unqualified fellows. We have access to Krishna just like that. Well, we don't have the consciousness that matches the access, but we still have access. And by accessing Krishna, gradually eligibility comes, purification comes, and attraction comes. And so our acharyas, they love Srimad Bhagavatam. So it's good for us to love Srimad Bhagavatam too. And we love to have other people receive it and get the real thing. One more sharing. About 3 weeks ago, something like that, somebody shared this with me. They grew up in, I think it's Kerala, and from their childhood, their mother would read Srimad Bhagavatam in their native tongue every day, so many hours. She loved Srimad Bhagavatam. Then their daughter went to college and studied in America, got her degree, got a job, got married, and then she became a devotee. And so when she went back to visit her mom, she gave her mom, she sent her mom a copy of Prabhupada's Bhagavatam in her native tongue. And so when she went to visit, she saw her mother was just reading Srimad Bhagavatam day and night in Prabhupada's Bhagavatam. She was really pleased. And her mother said, I've read Bhagavatam my whole life and I never really understood it. And now I can understand it. I don't want to stop reading this book. You know, that's a pious South Indian lady who liked Srimad Bhagavatam, even she couldn't understand it. What to speak of, then you understand it. And then we can't understand it either, but it's still not different than Krishna and access, just like deity worship of the holy name, the Srimad Bhagavatam. Very, very special. So, see if there's any discussion.
Anyone have a question?
Do we have a microphone? It's just over here.
So, Nanda and Yashoda, right? The Mata, like they are eternal parents of Krishna. Similarly, like other expansions, like Lord Ram and Lord Vamandev's, like Kashyap Muni and Mother Aditi or King Dashrath and Kaushalya Mataji. They are also like eternal parents of those expansions, or they, somebody has opportunity to become like, that.
Well, Kashyapa and Aditi aren't eternally Kashyapa and Aditi. Kaushalya and Dasarath, they're eternally Kaushalya and Dasarath. So there's differences. Are you interested?
Yes. But not taking their position. But I was trying to understand, like, if they are the eternal positions, right, then okay, we can only be there.
Become servants of them. In part, that's what's the result of hearing about them, is to want to become like them or serve them. I mean, even Shukadeva Goswami is saying, Brahma, Shiva, even the goddess of fortune, they're not as fortunate. They're not receiving the fullness of mercy that Yashoda is receiving. And he's just like ecstatic about it. And he gets to talk about her. We get to hear about her. And that's the next Leela, the Damodar Leela. Why it's such a celebrated Leela. One of the reasons. So, that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Anyone else here to?
Raj, one question I was thinking about is, during Vrindavan pastime, there is this Brahmana performing yajna, and Gopas going to them, and they don't give food for Krishna and Balram. But the Brahmana's wives, understanding that Krishna and Balram are the yajna Purusha. So, do you understand that the Brahmanas are covered by Mahamaya in that case, and the Brahmana's wives are not under any Maya?
Yeah, they were proud. Sometimes it happens that Brahmanas are proud. And they were proud. So that's Mahamaya. They're in Braja, but they're...
That was my next question.
Yeah. But they're getting mercy from their wives and from Krishna.
But my understanding also was, nobody in Vraja knows the supreme position of Krishna and Balram. They are in a different mode, right?
Well, the wives weren't necessarily understanding Krishna as the supreme. They loved him as mothers love children. Now, interestingly, I have to go back and look at the detail, but my memory says the words they spoke were the same, almost verbatim the same words the gopis spoke when they came to see Krishna in the dead of night. So their relationship was not exactly Vatsalya Rasa. But I don't want to speak more about it. So they weren't seeing his divinity, but it was a rasa attraction for Krishna that they had because their pride wasn't there. Pride was blocking their husbands.
Can you just clarify, Maharaj, is Aishwarya Rasa and Dasya Rasa the same?
Are which and which?
Aishwarya and Dasya.
No, they're not the same. They Aishwarya means opulence and Dasya means service. Don't mean the same. They have a different meaning. Now, in Vaikuntha, there's Aishwarya, and there are persons that have a mood of service of Narayan. In Goloka, there's Aishwarya and Madhurya, and there are devotees that have a relationship with Krishna as Dasya. But they may see him differently depending on the degree of intense affection they have for him compared to seeing his majesty, seeing the majestic aspect of him. So it's not there are grades of sweetness, even in Braja. For the mothers, there's other mothers. We just heard this description. They had Krishna taking their breast milk for 1 year. Mother Jasoda, she was never without Krishna. So there's gradations of intimacy with Krishna, even in Braja. Amongst his cowherd boyfriends, there's different cowherd boyfriends. And there's different moods, etc. It's like unlimited. Amongst the gopis, and so on. Krishna had his favorite cows. He loved cows, but he had his favorite cows.
One more question, Maharaj.
Yeah, as many as you like.
So Maharaj, I think I was hearing one of the lectures that you gave recently. One of them you mentioned that, if I remember correctly, that the prayers and the purpose is to understand our true spiritual form, right? So once you realize like your true spiritual form, is that the starting point to go towards prema bhava, or when you realize your true spiritual form, that time that love awakens for Krishna?
I don't understand your question.
So,
try it again.
Sorry. Yes. So the reason for us to do like prayers and the sadhana and to so that eventually we realize our true spiritual form, what in our relationship with God, right? So that point, your love for Krishna already is awakened at that point, or
yes.
then after
yes.
that you have to do something to reach to a prem bhav?
Well, okay. The second part is kind of muddy. So the first part is a little clearer. And the first part is, we read in Brahma Samhita that Brahma received 2 mantras, and from chanting one and then the second mantra for an extended period of time, first he became well acquainted with the ocean of truth. Then it says he had some preliminary understanding of his eternal relationship as a maidservant. Preliminary understanding. So then it unfolds and unfolds and unfolds and unfolds. But he had an understanding, and that was the mood, that the place from which, or the mood by which he offered his prayers. That's our Brahma in Brahma Samhita. And then there's different Brahmas that have different relationships. For example, in Canto 2, Chapter 9, that Brahma has a relationship of friendship, indicated by when he approached Lord Vishnu. Vishnu stood and extended his hand, shook his hand. It wasn't coronavirus, he could shake hands. Sakya. When there is some understanding of one's spiritual form or spiritual identity, it goes further and further. It's not static, it's dynamic. I think that's the second part of your question. It continues to unfold and unfold and unfold and unfold. It's very dynamic. That take
helps.
care of your question?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else? Our younger three here. Anyone? Any thoughts on this interesting topic? You usually have some nice questions. Any questions this evening? Silence, okay. How about you? Nothing? Okay. Online?
No.
Nothing. Srila Prabhupada ki?
Jai.
Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki?
Jai.
Or Prema